still here. We're all here. This is coronavirus, I guess, week 3 in America. I'm thinking, and things are getting crazy out there, but I want you to know that we're going to get through this, folks. We are going to get through this. Still coming into the studio. I'll let you know when that ends. It might not. It might not. We might just see this downtick in the next few weeks, and we'll all get back to life as normal. Life as normal, right? It's so not normal right now. I was heading to Starbucks this morning to get my coffee before coming into the studio, and I was stunned. I was stunned that as I pulled into the Starbucks that was close to my home, they had basically shut off the entire area where, usually I would see people sitting and enjoying their coffee and working. It was completely closed. Nobody. There were maybe 2 people in this Starbucks that is usually completely busy. They had maybe 2 mobile drinks sitting there. They only had 2 employees working. They actually looked really bummed out. Everybody's worried. They thanked me. Jenny Terre, who works with me, and she's producer here at the Sarah Carter Show, along with Adam. They were talking about their experiences, in the city and coming in today, no traffic. Jenny said that there were people in her neighborhood who were actually thanking her and her roommates for actually coming into their small business because people are afraid they're going to lose jobs. They're going to lose their businesses. This is really scary for a lot of folks.
I just had my first wedding cancellation. I don't even want to put that into the ether sphere, but yeah, I mean,
people are worried.
Yeah, it's bad. People
are worried, and I'm sure you're worried too, Adam. I'm sure you're worried about, where's the next paycheck going to come if, Adam's a DJ. He does he's an amazing DJ, has tons of work, especially during wedding season. Everybody wants him out here on the East Coast. And a lot of people are probably going to be canceling just because of that. Maybe not. Maybe I'm keeping my fingers crossed, Adam. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
All of us professionals are going to work with anybody who's doing these cancellations not to refund, but to reschedule and to, I'm even hiring on new people to train to make sure that we can handle any scheduling needs. But
right.
I really think that we just need to pump the brakes on the world is coming to an end. I mean, did you see that Outbreak is one of the top 5 movies on Netflix right now?
I believe it. Outbreak, Contagion, all the documentaries. Netflix is pumping that. Amazon's pumping that. Every time I put on Netflix or Amazon, the top rated ones or the newest releases are all the documentaries on pandemics. It's like we're living in some kind of crazy movie or something, and everybody wants to know something about this. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I don't know if it's just me. It might not be. I don't know if you're feeling that way out there, but I almost feel like there's this strange overreaction. I feel like President Trump did the right thing in the beginning. Look, he closed off flights coming in from China. That was a smart move. People went after him for it in the very beginning. He mitigated the spread of this virus here in the United States. Now, of course, we have shut off flights coming in from Europe. We see what's happening in Italy. We're not seeing the same kind of issues in other parts of Europe that we're seeing in Italy. Italy's been hit the hardest. I have talked to a journalist over there in Italy who is phenomenal, who told me that, Italy is really suffering. But interestingly enough, the other European nations aren't helping Italy the way that they need to be, with supplies, with masks, with things that they need for their hospitals. But as far as this virus is concerned, we are overreacting, maybe for good reason. I know some doctors are saying, we want to mitigate the spread. We don't want our hospitals overwhelmed. But there's also an issue where I almost feel like it's been politicized as well. We're seeing it hit our economy very hard. We're seeing that certain states, California, New York, are taking extraordinary measures that, for me, would only happen in the movie Outbreak, right? If there was some kind of super virulent pathogen that was killing everyone. It was going after children, after middle age, after the elderly. This is so. What I see Adam waving
I was just going to say
hands.
Armageddon also in the top 10.
Yeah. Oh, Armageddon also in the top 10. I watched that one for fun, though. I watched that to just go to sleep at night. Armageddon. It's Bruce Willis. I think I know every line in the movie. It's just so ridiculous, but never know.
Maybe we'll do that one day when we're out of studio and we have to come up with content. We'll just have you quote the movie.
Yeah, we'll just go through it. I'll get the script and I'll act out every role. I don't want to say that I actually know it by heart, but I
bet you could do it.
I bet I could. I could do it. I could act it out. But right now, I just want everyone to take a deep breath and think about what we're doing. Think about how we are responding to this. My daughter's home from school. She's 7 years old. And of course, when you're little, you're concerned because she's hearing, the news. I'm trying to keep that away from her and just having, telling her this is just a way we're trying to help not spread the virus. I'm talking to her about why it's important that we wash our hands, that for this virus, it appears to be affecting the elderly. And that's why they really don't want young people hanging out with older people right now, because some young people can carry it and pass it on to the elderly. I've been talking to her about these things and she seems pretty good. She seems pretty well adjusted to it. She was actually excited that she could be home and she's like, I'm being homeschooled today. I don't have to wear my uniform. I can wear whatever I want. So she was very excited to get up and be free to wear whatever clothes she wanted because she does go to school in a uniform. She goes to a Catholic school. So she's actually very happy to be home with mom and dad and having some time. So we're trying to take advantage of the good side of things. Now, today on the show, I have Dr. Ronny Jackson. He is absolutely incredible. The guy is somebody who I believe has done such an immense service to this nation. He is, he was President Trump's he was a White House physician, head of the White House. And he goes into detail about the work that he did with President Trump at the White House and the importance of heeding the warnings, but not being so over exaggerated about this, not being so worried about where this is all going. And I think Dr. Jackson lays it out and says, look, we are going to be fine. We are going to get through this. We're going to make it. We're going to be fine. Not everyone is going to react the same way to this virus. What we know is that the most important thing is to keep people who are elderly, people who are over the age of 75, away from young people, away from crowds. But I don't think that should stop us from enjoying our lives a bit. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be locked up in your house all day long, all night long. I mean, we could still get to the grocery store. Maybe we can still go out for some dinners. I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you what to do. You have to make your own decisions for yourself. But this virus right now, we want to mitigate the spread, but we also do not want to become alarmists. And our economy is really suffering right now because of this. And I know the federal government has all kinds of programs out there right now to help small businesses, to help those of us who are affected directly by this virus, to pull through in the next few months, to pull through this crisis right now with COVID-19. But I also want us to be sensible and to look at every aspect of this, to really educate yourselves and say to yourself, okay, what is it that I can do and what is it that I can't do? And I think this is really what Dr. Jackson, other doctors that I've spoken to have been talking about. They really want us to take the precautions that we need to, but they also don't want us to be fearful, to be living with fear. We just need to understand it, and then we need to move forward. That's the most important thing right now. That's the most important thing. It was interesting. A lot of people called me on Sunday because President Trump had retweeted a few of my tweets. Totally unexpected. Totally unexpected.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
It is. It's great. I think President Trump has done a remarkable job. And I really feel that there is such a visceral hate on the left for him. And I'm going to be playing some of this later in my interview with Ronny Jackson. If you hear what Jennifer Rubin, by the way, I have now nicknamed her Dr. Rubin, Dr. Jennifer Rubin. I'm saying this over and over again because she apparently believes she is a medical professional, and she has predicted that a lot more Republicans, older Republicans, are going to die of the COVID-19 virus because she says that the Republicans weren't fast enough to react to this. This is just crazy talk, okay? This is craziness. This is just extreme Trump derangement syndrome. If you want to know of something that is actually affecting a lot of people and has lasted for years, at least 4 years now, almost 4 years, is TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. They just can't shake it. Trump lives inside their heads. He's like President Trump everywhere. They just have to go after him. They don't even care what happens. They just want him out.
It's their entire platform.
It's their whole platform is I hate Trump and I want him out. So they won't even mind. I think, to some extent, the way that they're acting right now on television, if the economy is taking a turn for the worse and they think that can get Trump out of office, okay, that's what they're going to do. And I am not going to stand by and watch that happen. I think that this administration has done an incredible job of targeting and working with the task force in order to mitigate the spread of this virus. I think that we are all going to, in the next few weeks to the next few months, at the latest, hopefully, God willing, right, get through this and be fine and move forward. I think that's going to be the most important thing. But without further ado, I want to bring Dr. Ronny Jackson. He's a retired Rear Admiral in the United States Navy. He is incredible. His last duty was an assignment at the White House, where he served as assistant to the president and as the appointed chief medical advisor to President Donald Trump. He is going to talk to you in layman's terms about this virus, and I hope he sets your mind at ease because he did mine. Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for being on the Sarah Carter Show. I was going to have you on even in normal times. These are so abnormal. And I guess I'm lucky, to have you on the show today because of what's been happening across the country. This extraordinary response to the COVID-19 coronavirus. And I don't think there's anybody better at explaining what could be going on here than you. But I got to tell you right off the bat, I feel very concerned about this reaction. Everything's shut down. I went to a Starbucks today to pick up my coffee. They've closed off the area for seating. Small businesses are basically shutting down, closing for 2 weeks. It could tailspin for them economically. People were thankful when I walked into a business to eat at a restaurant over the weekend with my husband because nobody was there. What do you think's going on here, and how do you gauge this response to mitigating the spread of the COVID-19 virus?
Well, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate you having me. It's great to be with you. I think, I'm a little bit, confused with some of the stuff that's going on at the local and state level. Now, I think President Trump has been very decisive. He's been quick in his actions. He did a lot of things that were really important right up front. He closed the border, to China. He stopped travel coming in from China from certain areas, and that turned out to be really key in our response to all of this. Even though at the time he was labeled as racist and xenophobic and all this other stuff, but it turned out it was the right move. And he's continued to provide, decisive, leadership on this, with everything he's done with the team he's put together and with the European travel restrictions we have now. So I think from the White House standpoint, from the administration standpoint, he's taken appropriate actions. And, he's all along told people like, hey, look, we need to take precautions based on your age group, what risk category you fall into, things of that nature. And I think it's totally appropriate that we have our elderly folks, a lot of our parents and our elderly parents and grandparents staying at home. And, we're bringing them groceries and keeping them out of the public because they really are the group that's at risk right now. But for the rest of the country, some of this seems like a little bit of an overreaction to me. Closing everything down. We had H1N1, we've had SARS, we've had MERS, we've had Ebola, we've had all this kind of stuff, and we've never had a reaction like this from our elected officials. And like I said, I think that the federal government, has stepped out appropriately to kind of take the leadership role in this. But some of these local governments that they seem to be going above and beyond. And I don't know how much of this is just being driven by, unsubstantiated or, fear that really shouldn't, that's unjustified fear, and how much of this is being, driven by political, for political reasons too, because there is some of that out there, to be honest with you. I mean, there are people out there that just think, on the far left right now that you can look on social media and stuff, and they just think this is a great thing for them because, the economy's crashing, or taking a big hit because of this. And they're really hoping, that this costs President Trump his second term.
I really got to tell you, Dr. Jackson, I feel the same way. I can't help but think that the reaction of some of the people on the left is exactly that. And I'm going to play you a clip from somebody who's a so-called conservative, Jennifer Rubin, who I believe got a medical degree over the last week. So now I'm nicknaming her Dr. Jennifer Rubin. And I want to play you this clip just so I could get a response from you on it.
There is a particular cruelty, irony, that it is their core viewers, the Republican older viewers, as Eric said, who are the most at risk. And when you think about it, which party immediately canceled all of their rallies? Which party immediately started having their political figures really portray and use their lives as an example? It was the Democrats. So they're going to be, I hate to put it in these terms, there are going to be less Democrat deaths because there will be less mass gatherings. There will be less opportunities for people to congregate and share this horrible disease. So it is really a very short-sighted strategy.
So basically, more Republicans are going to die because they decided not to overreact at the beginning to this. That's what Dr. Rubin, I'm giving her a promotion, Dr. Rubin is saying. I mean, how do you respond to this type of rhetoric?
Well, it's pathetic. I mean, these are people that, I mean, as an American, this just disgusts me because these are people who are putting their political ambitions and their political agendas ahead of the safety of our country. I mean, and, the president has done a fantastic job leading on this. He's got to walk a fine line on this. He has to come out and he has to be quick, decisive, and he has to do things that that are going to blunt the spread of this virus, which he's done. But he also has to lead by example, and he has to he can't let the fear just take over our country, which is what is happening right now. And he's done a good job on that as well. But he's always in that position ever since he's been elected. Even before he was elected, he's in the damned if you do, damned if you don't category, no matter what happens.
Well, I was going to say that he's been very methodical. He's tried his best not to overreact to this, to say, look, of course, we're going to leave it up to the states. We're a federalist system. I mean, this is how we work with the local and state players doing their part along with the federal government. We're going to do our best to mitigate this. But then you see the overreaction of what's happening in California, what's happening in New York City. My child, all of the schools here in Alexandria, a good number of them, and the diocese with the Catholic school is actually keeping all kids at home for the next several weeks. So there is this sense of like over urgency because of this. And I'm just trying to figure out, is this because we don't have enough bed space? Is this because they're worried about people going to the hospitals? There's not enough ventilators? What's going on here that I just don't understand?
Yeah, it's crazy. They're pitching it like it's already happened. I mean, if you listen to the news and stuff, you would think that our hospital system's completely overwhelmed already and that all of our ICU beds are already taken and gone. This is crazy. We are not there yet. The president's put a lot of good things in place to make sure we don't get there. And I think that, some of this stuff that's happening, if this got much worse, then it would be appropriate to shut a lot of this stuff down. But this is this is way premature in my mind. I mean, we can't sustain this, for months on end. So these are the kinds of these are the kinds of big moves with closing schools down and and shutting governments down and everything. These are the kinds of things that we should have reserved for a time when it's appropriate, if this gets to that point, which I don't think personally that it will. But I think that that the left is just seized upon this, and they've said, look, we need to do everything we can just to scare people to death right now, and this is going to be horrible for the administration, and we're going to end up getting the presidency back. And I think that to a large extent, that's what a lot of this is about for some people. Now, I understand that there are people out there that have legitimate fears about this, and I fully understand that. And I'm not minimizing the potential for this to be a big deal, for the potential for it to be a big deal, because, it is a novel virus, and, we don't have any, immunity to it at this point. But I just think when you look at this virus and you look at what it's done in the United States right now, and you compare it to things like seasonal influenza, which kills 30 to 60,000 Americans a year, right? We're looking at these numbers going up, and every day I look at them, and it's, the number of deaths go up like 5, 10, 5, 10, whatever, right? And if you look at the people that are dying from seasonal influenza every single day, it's multiples of that, multiples.
Right.
But we don't talk about that. No one's running around, freaking out about that, closing down everything because of seasonal flu. But it's killing way more Americans every single day than this is. So I'm all about let's take this serious. Which the president has done. Let's put some things in place to protect us and to keep it from coming, from Italy and from China and places where where it's taken off a little bit from coming here. But this radical shutdown of our entire society just doesn't make sense to me at this particular point.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either, Dr. Jackson. I know that you are running for Congress, and it's very exciting right now in Texas. 13th congressional district. And I'm wondering what the constituents there are feeling. How are the small businesses handling it? Are people talking to you about their concerns? What's happening in your district or your future district, possibly, where you're running? What is happening there, and how are people handling this outbreak?
Well, now over the last few days, as some of this rhetoric has started to spread, some of the fear mongering has just has become so prevalent on cable news and everywhere else that there are a few things here that are starting to shut down. But for the most part, I'll be honest with you, the people here are not reacting to it like they are other places, up in the Northeast and on the West Coast and stuff. I got back a few days ago. I was, I'm here in Amarillo right now. I went to a St. Patrick's Day parade on Saturday in Shamrock, Texas. It was packed. Not inappropriately packed, but there were people lining the streets, watching the parade. And, they had vendors out there serving food, and it was all outdoors, and people were washing their hands. They had places to wash your hands. People were using lots of hand sanitizer, taking appropriate precautions. There weren't a lot of old people out there. People had already got the message that if they have elderly family members, they need to keep them away from environments like that, which is appropriate. But people were still going on about their lives and doing what they needed to do. And I just think that the fact that they're pushing out right now based on the way this disease has actually impacted, or the way it hasn't impacted our country to this point, and they're telling people they just have to lock themselves in their houses. It's crazy. I tell people, if you need to go to the grocery store to get some groceries, go get your groceries. If you have to go out and pay bills or something, go do that. You need to be able to do the everyday, day-to-day things that life requires at this point, because we may get to a point down the road where these restrictions need to be in place, and we're going to be in real trouble if we've done this for weeks and weeks before we get to that actual point where we should have been doing it.
Exactly. And well, I think one of the big issues, and you brought up a really great point. When I was in Boston last week, they actually closed off and they basically didn't hold their St. Patty's Day parade. So that was canceled. All the major events in Boston were canceled. But I want to go to California now. Now, California has implemented a lot of very strict regulations under the governor. But in California, which I go every month to do Steve Hilton's show, has a huge problem with homelessness. 60,000 people in Los Angeles County alone live on the streets. There's been a problem with disease, rampant disease on the streets with the homeless, rats. It's dirty. There's a lot of issues in California that they haven't dealt with, but they're dealing with this in such an extreme way. Why, as you're running for Congress, this is an issue that's very local in California. Why do you think there's this reaction to to COVID-19 and not a reaction to the number of homeless people in the millions in California that are dealing with this, that are dealing with that?
I think the obvious answer to that is the political gain that comes from this. I mean, I think that they are convinced that this is it. They've been working so hard to figure out how to keep President Trump from getting a second term or to get him out of office during this term. They've spent every waking minute for the last 3.5 years trying to figure out how to take him down and undermine him. And this is just the latest one where they've seized onto it and said, this is it. We've got it. This is our opportunity. We have to make the most out of it. And they really are trying to make something out of a national crisis, or actually create a national crisis for political purposes. And I said again, I'll say over and over, because I don't want to be accused of this. I am not minimizing the fact that this is potentially a serious issue. And I'm following. And you ask about the difference in people out here. I say the biggest difference in people out here in the 13th congressional district, in the Texas Panhandle and North Texas, is that they trust President Trump and his leadership out here, and they're following his directions out here, and they trust that he is going to do what's necessary when it's necessary to take care of the public. And I think that's not the case in other parts of the country, but I think that's why the people out here are different. They're very patriotic, and they're proud to be Americans, and they're Americans first and foremost, and they're never going to put their political agenda ahead of our country and fellow Americans. And I think that's just a big difference.
Well, let me go to President Trump, because you know President Trump very well. You were his physician. He is extraordinary for his age, the number of hours that he sleeps a night, the amount of work that he does. He's very cognitive as compared to what we've seen with Joe Biden on the road. And I'm going to play a little clip of Joe Biden here just shortly, briefly, and tell me what you think about Joe Biden and what could be going on with the former vice president.
Planning where we're going to put these temporary hospitals. And we can do that. We did that. We've been through this before with the coronavirus. We've been through this before. We've been through this before with dealing with the viruses that the N1H15, as well as what happened in Africa.
The N1H15. I mean, I don't even know what virus he's talking about. I get an idea. I think he was talking about H1N1, and I know that can easily happen. People can flip-flop things around. But he's been making a lot of these gaffes, and actually I'm kind of concerned. At first, it seemed kind of funny, but I don't even think it's funny anymore. I think that there's actually something going on here.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I'm concerned as well, and all Americans should be concerned if he's going to be the nominee on the Democrat side of the House. I mean, age affects everyone in different ways. And I will tell you firsthand that President Trump, is very sharp, from a cognitive standpoint. He has been since day one, and he continues to be. And as people get older, some people get to the point where they have difficulty remembering things, and kind of putting things together on a cognitive level. I think that he's demonstrating his age, to be honest with you, and I just think that. It's becoming really obvious, I think, to a lot of folks that, perhaps they should have picked someone who was a little bit younger, to be their flag bearer on this, because it's just not. It doesn't look good.
Well, I know. And this is something like we've seen reporters at the White House just pile on President Trump, pile on him about any little slip up that he makes or anything that's normal. And we don't see that same kind of reaction with former Vice President Joe Biden. One of the things that was interesting, though, was when they believed that President Trump had been exposed to COVID-19, and that was through the Brazilian president and some of his aides. And everybody was pushing and pushing. And I'm talking about those reporters. Did he get a test yet? Is he going to get a test? Does he have a fever? It was almost like, give me some information. And finally, here's what the president had to say. And of course, he tested negative when the results came back. But here's what President Trump had to say.
I had my temperature taken coming into the room.
So did we.
You did? Good.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Let's compare. Do you want to compare?
We did all of it. Yeah.
Good. Well, that means we're all looking good. I also took the test last night. Yeah. And I decided I should, based on the press conference yesterday. People were asking, did I take the test? I don't know, whatever it takes, a day or 2 days, whatever it is. They send it to a lab.
It came back negative. The president didn't want to overreact just because he had been exposed for a brief period of time. He thought he wasn't actually, but exposed to possibly somebody carrying the COVID-19 virus. He did the right thing.
He did, Sarah. I think, he's leading by example again right there, and he was basically holding himself to the same standard that anyone else in our country based on their exposure would have been. There was no clinical indication to do that test, none. And anybody else, if I'm an emergency medicine physician, if someone would come into the emergency department and they've been in President Trump's position, being asymptomatic, they'd described their, potential exposure to me, I would have looked at the CDC guidelines, and, based on the risk of that exposure, and there would have been no indication to do that test, and there wasn't. He got that test for the same reason that he got the cognitive test that I did when I did his physical exam. Once again, there was zero indications for me to do a cognitive test on him, none. We did that cognitive test because he asked me to, because the press had been creating a narrative for months before I did his physical exam that he was mentally and physically unfit to be president. And they were just building this up. They were relentless on it, right? And they had nothing to base that on, nothing. They were just, that was one of their early attempts to get him out of office. They thought they were going to get him on that. And so, there came a point where, even though there was no clinical indication to do the test, there was an indication based on the political concerns around it or whatever. They just spun it up so much that we had to do it just to take it off the table. And that's exactly what happened with this test. It got to the point where basically the press was so fixated on him not getting the test that they couldn't even talk about all the other actions that he was taking to keep our country safe, with declaring a national emergency and all this other stuff that he was about to do, or some of the stuff he'd already done. And so they just said, you know what, we got to do the test just to get them to stop talking about it, take it off the table. And that's what they did.
Well, this is really quite frightening, Dr. Jackson, when you think about it, because it's been relentless on President Trump. But the actual actions being taken by some of the states here and the way we're overreacting, I believe, to some extent to the COVID-19 virus is not just damaging to this administration, but damaging to our nation as a whole, to the economy, to our children, to the way we handle things. I'm very concerned that the way some of the states and some of the local municipalities have been reacting to this is going to do far more extensive damage than anything else, just, I don't know, based on fear or for political reasons.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. It's going to be it's going to hurt us long term, and that's a shame because, like I said, it's not for the right reasons. But I also tell you, you mentioned President Trump's cognitive performance in comparison to Vice President Biden's, and I'll tell you the other thing I was going to tell you before we left that topic is I was so frustrated with the way things were going. I tweeted out a little something a while back about that, and I just got brutalized, on social media. But I was so, just sick of the way that they had come after President Trump, relentlessly with this, assumption that they were trying to put out there, or they were trying to create this narrative that he was cognitively unfit to be president, and that they had not one single thing to base that on. And then all of this stuff starts happening with Vice President Biden, and I just put out a simple tweet just saying, hey, does anybody remember the cognitive test that I gave to President Trump, the one that he aced? It looks like somebody else needs a cognitive test, right? And I think that it's unbelievable to me that you look at all the gaffes that Vice President Biden has had over the last several months on the campaign trail, and nobody in the liberal press is talking about him needing any kind of testing. I mean, I had psychiatrists sending me letters demanding that I have a whole panel of psychiatrists come up to the White House and examine the president. Right? Where is this concern with Vice President Biden? It is so like, they're so hypocritical when it comes to that. It's not even funny. I can't even describe to you the discrepancy there. Yeah.
Well, if you were his doctor, if you were still the doctor at the White House and it was President Biden, would you want him to take a cognitive test and do all of the exams? I mean, if that was the case?
Absolutely. Guess what? I think they boxed him in. I think the fact that they made such a big deal out of it with President Trump, and then we relented and we went ahead and did it, just like I said, just to get it off the table. If he becomes president now, I would say that the precedent has been set. It's an expectation. He's got to get one. Not only that, Sarah, but they came back afterwards because they were just upset that the president had scored, really
remember
well.
that.
Got a perfect score on it. That they came back and you can pull up all kinds of stuff from the press and from liberal lawmakers and everything saying, well, that test wasn't thorough enough, right? He should have had a more extensive psychological exam. And from now on, anytime there's a president that's elected, before he's sworn in, before inauguration, he should get a battery of tests given by a group of hand-selected, psychiatrists from all over the country. There's a lot of people that were advocating for stuff like that, right? And so I'm hoping, first off, I'm hoping that he doesn't become our president. But if we end up with that, with that disaster on our hands, I hope that they go back and they implement that, because I don't think it's going to be good.
Well, I've got two more questions for you, because I know I got to let you go. I know you have an event of social distancing that you have to be at, I do have two more questions for you. What is your worst fear out of this, and what is your greatest hope in the end of all of this?
Well, I guess my worst fear is that, that there's some truth to this and, this becomes a big deal for us medically. I don't think that's going to happen, but obviously, that would be my worst fear. Although I don't let that fear drive my day-to-day actions, and I don't think anybody else should either. We're not there yet. My greatest hope in this is that we just, we make it through this. We make it through this quickly. It turns out that we way overreacted to this. It turns out that the president was right from the beginning on this. And that there's overwhelming support for him in his reelection bid in November, and we get him back as our president for another 4 years.
Right. I couldn't have said it better. And I also hope for everyone out there who's a small business owner, for everybody who's waiting to go back to work, I hope this ends quickly. I hope everyone stays safe. For those of you who have grandparents and parents that you're concerned about, who may be elderly, who may be susceptible to this, I hope that, God blesses you and that you don't have any problems and that your family gets better and heals. But, in the end of all things, this is America. And, we have survived far worse than COVID-19.
I agree. Absolutely.
And I can't thank you enough again, Dr. Jackson. I know I didn't get enough time to talk to you about your congressional campaign. Is there anything you'd like to say about your campaign and what you're doing there in the 13th Congressional District before I let you go?
No, I'd just like to tell everybody, you may have I know you have a lot of listeners from the 13th Congressional District. They just need to get out and vote. We have a runoff election on May 26th. There's two of us in the race now. It's between me and a lobbyist for the Cattle Feeders Association. And I think that, with my background and with my, connections with the president, with the cabinet, with members of the West Wing, I think I can have a huge impact for this district, and I can be really influential, more so than your typical freshman congressman would be. And I think if folks put me in office, I'll make them proud.
Dr. Jackson brought up some very important points, some things that we need to be thinking about. We need to just think about it. We need to question everything, but we need to be smart. And we need to do what's best for our families. And, my daughter is home today. I'm not going to go visit anybody at an elderly facility. I'm not going to try to expose myself to anyone. If I feel sick, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to do all those things. But we really need to think about what Dr. Jackson was saying there. I mean, there are a lot of people who, and I talked about this at the beginning of the show, who have TDS, who have Trump derangement syndrome, and who will do anything to spread malicious lies and rumors. And sometimes a lot of that information that's out there on the web is not accurate. We got to be really careful about this. Remember when they said that Google had no idea that it was working with the White House and the task force, the COVID-19 task force? Well, we found out later that was completely untrue. Google absolutely was a part of all the talks with the task force, which is headed by Vice President Mike Pence, who's doing an incredible job of coordinating and working with the president on this. So we've got to really keep our eyes open. I have a list here of things that have happened. These are the COVID-19 updates for today. We've got the fact that the CDC, these are the Centers for Disease Control, recommended Sunday that nobody attend gatherings with 50 or more people in the United States for the next 8 weeks. Probably the reason why, Adam, your wedding was canceled, right? The New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, announced Sunday that all schools in New York City, this is the nation's largest public school system, folks, be shut down. So there is nobody going to school for the next few weeks in New York City. So that's what's happened there. We've got New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who said that schools will close Monday. They'll open April 20th at the earliest. We have California is calling for all people 65 and older to shelter in their homes, not to leave their homes at all. So we've heard about people helping and assisting the elderly. You have a story, Adam, on that?
I went to my parents' house last night. They're both 70, and they are just dying to hug me. And I'm fighting them off like they're the 15-year-olds and I'm the adult.
You're just like, don't hug me. I could be social distancing.
Am I crazy? Am I allowed to hug my parents? I mean, I don't know what to do right now.
You know what? I mean, come on. If you don't have a fever, you're not, as far as I know, maybe if your clothes, I don't know, can live on your clothes for a while, maybe you're doing the right thing, right? I mean, this is what they're asking. These are what doctors are saying that could, especially with the elderly, we want to keep them healthy and alive. You're doing the right thing, Adam.
I just don't want to be the reason that my parents or anybody else's parents get sick from this. That's the only way I can think
I know.
about it.
And that's a scary thing to think about, that we've actually been made to feel this way. Like we are the plague to the elderly. It's like, it's so horrible. Okay. We have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker ordered all bars and restaurants in the state to close. The move will affect the nation's third largest city in Chicago. Think about that. Think about that. And the Federal Reserve today, oh my gosh, down to 0.25. Wow. Interest rates are nothing. If you're going to buy a house, buy it right now. Buy it right now. Don't even waste. If you got any money saved up, you want to buy a home, you want to buy a condo, do it right now. Those interest rates are crazy low. I mean, that'll save you thousands of dollars a month, depending on what you're buying, right? Or hundreds. It's amazing.
I want to be responsible with what I'm saying, but I feel like there's even a little bit more room to wait to buy.
Oh,
I just
really?
want to give it about another week or so, and then just if I have any money left over, like if I had any extra cash right now, I would be dumping it.
Yeah,
right
you would be
this.
into a house.
Yeah, or something.
Or
it's
something.
a good time to buy.
It is. It's a good time to buy stocks too.
But remember, just to be clear, that's money that if it goes and you lose it, you know, and you're fine with it. Like, I don't want to tell anybody. You don't want to do
that. Yeah, of course. You don't want to put anybody, you're just saying for yourself.
If I had $5,000 to play with, now would be a great time to dump it in the stock.
That's right. You would just do it for yourself. And so those are some of the things that are happening right now. Now we're also, for everyone out there, I know everybody's trying to figure out what to do with your children when you're at home. And my poor little Annalise is like just excited that she can wear whatever clothes she wants. But I know that as the days go on, and I'm going to be working with her at home on her schoolwork, her teacher's amazing, her school's amazing, that there's going to be times where she's really going to get a little bit bored. She's not going to be around her friends. And that kind of concerns me. But we have some ideas out there, at least I do, for those of you with small children in the home that you're going to be working with or having. And now for those of you who have to work and need to get childcare, I would love to know how you're doing this because it's not easy to manage. I mean, it costs a lot of money for childcare. I work from home half the time, so that's going to help. And my husband will be home because he can't go into the office, so he's going to help. But for those of you that are still going to work and are not told to stay home, if you have children, I'd love to know how you're working that out. Are you leaving them with family? Is there a friend? Are you paying for childcare? But as far as like things to do with the kids, board games. We've forgotten about how fun family time is. And I think so many of us spend so much time in our phones and our computers, doing things that really alienate the family, and even television, that really separate the family from doing things together. Board games are awesome. Annalise loves it. We play, she's learning Yahtzee. We have the Jumanji game.
What's your favorite board game?
I love Jumanji now with her because we play. She really gets into it, and she thinks like they're all coming to life, and like, we've got to get to the end of the game, and she we make the drum sounds, boop, 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 and all that stuff. So it's a really fun board game. Monopoly, only for the older kids. Like if they were over, Monopoly is definitely still a family favorite because everybody is trying to be, the real estate mogul. Everybody's trying to be Trump. We're trying to buy up Park Place and Boardwalk and all of that. So we've got that. There's also, and I don't know why I'm blanking out on this
Risk?
game. Risk is a lot of fun.
If you've got some time to kill, folks.
Risk is a lot of fun. I have not played Risk in a long time, though. I haven't played Risk in a long time. One of the things that we do play, and I don't know why, at dinner all the time, if we go out to dinner especially, it's tic-tac-toe. It's tic-tac-toe. But now Annalise has become such an expert that it's cat's game every time. It's cat's game. Or I'm not paying attention, which is usually what happens. Like we're like X, O, and I'm just starting to wander off my mind. And then I don't pay attention and she gets me.
I feel so dumb when I lose it. When I lose at tic-tac-toe, I feel so stupid.
I feel that way too. I feel like, oh my gosh, my kids just beat me 3 times in a row. I am not paying attention here. She thinks it's awesome. It gives her a lot of self-confidence. But we spend time at home. So spend time together, cook together, go for walks. I mean, it's not like Corona is going to be jumping out of the, the trail and jumping on you. Go for a walk, take your dogs for a walk, spend some time outside. If you have a patio or a balcony or whatever, just spend some time. Oh, in Italy, it was really fascinating because everybody's locked down in Italy. So there are a couple of interesting things. And by the way, I'll be posting a story. It's from Logan Raddick and a few, like some of the things that people have been doing to pass the time during the COVID-19, I guess, sequester or, since we're not allowed to go out, especially in Italy. People are not allowed out. So they've been playing bingo from their balconies, which is really fun. And then there's another guy that's been like singing the opera at night, serenading people. There was some guy, I think in Minnesota, driving around on a porta potty. He was trying to be fun, about the whole toilet paper issue. So he was driving around this circle in a porta potty with some guys on motorcycles. We all find ingenious ways to make the best out of a bad situation. And this is probably one of the worst situations that we can think of in recent memory, where our economy is being affected, where our small businesses are being affected. If you're not sick, if you don't have a fever, you can do stuff to keep the economy going, to keep it moving, to keep it generating. We don't need to be so fearful that we lock ourselves up in our rooms, folks. We need to keep living. And that's what we do. That's what human beings do. We use our smarts, we do what's right, and we keep living and we keep moving forward. I'm so happy that you were here with me today on The Sara Carter Show. Please see the latest stories and the latest updates on the coronavirus, COVID-19, Wuhan, whatever you want to call it. It's at SaraCarter.com. Again, you could read all the top stories at SaraCarter.com. Follow me on Twitter at SaraCarterDC. Again, follow me on Twitter at SaraCarterDC. I would be happy for you to retweet. Thank you, President Trump, for retweeting my tweets. It means a lot to me. I am by your side. I am praying for you. I am praying for our country that we'll get over this soon. And thank you for letting me learn so much from you. Please let me know how you're handling the COVID-19. I'd love to hear from you and get your stories out there. Again, thanks. This is the Sara Carter Show, and we're taking the story back.